Hi everybody, so glad to have you with me for this review and double tutorial using the Too Faced Natural Love palette. So this is the big new thing from Too Faced. Chances are you've seen this all over social media, and I really wanted to give you my review on this today. I'm seeing it right now for $59 on Too Faced website, but this is a 30 color eyeshadow palette. Quite a bit going on here, and just to give you the background, because I was kind of curious as to, what the inspiration behind this palette really was, because they did decide to include 13 shades that have appeared before in other palettes, and then the rest are new shades. On the website they talk about coming out with the Natural Eye palette back in 2009 and how popular that was, and it says to celebrate that iconic look, get ready to fall hard for the first ever Natural Love eyeshadow collection. And it says we had to include some of your favorites from the best-selling Natural Eyes, Natural Matte, Natural at Night palettes. Oh, Natural at Night was like one of my all-time faves. But get ready to take your neutral game to the next level with new exclusive shades. Packaging wise on this guy, it's really adorable, and it's not too over packaged, I think. For the fact that you're getting 30 eyeshadows in here, I don't really see a lot of excess, both in the thickness of the palette or the width or anything like that, and you are getting a great big mirror as well. As I look left to right at the shadow selection, you can see it going from light to dark, obviously. So I look at the bottom, they've put some really warm shades right down here. We're mixing matte, shimmer, a few kind of sparkle infused shades. The shimmer on some is downright metallic, whereas with others it's sort of a barely there satiny type thing. There are certain shades in here, and as we go through looking at swatches you'll see there are some unusual neutrals in here, and it's sort of hard to impress me these days with neutral shades or to make me feel like, wow, I'm getting something different here, but there are some colors in here that I feel like are totally stunning and really offering something different from the norm. But in the little backstory on this palette, they mentioned Natural Eyes, and this is definitely a palette that they're taking a lot from. In terms of the shades from this palette that are going into this other big one, you're getting Heaven, Nudie, Push Up, Honey Pot, and Chocolate Martini. So that's 5 out of 9 shades in this palette. And then when I look at the shades that you're not getting, I kind of glance over at this and I'm thinking, well, there are a lot of similar shades to what you didn't get out of this palette. So it's kind of like you're getting Natural Eyes in here, enclosed in this larger palette, which I do think is kind of a good deal. And I had discussed this palette a little bit in my beauty chat video that I did, and the thought of including some iconic shades from other palettes. And I do appreciate the fact that if they're going to do that, if that's the route they're going to take, I like that they point out exactly what those shades are, give them the same names, don't try to just like pop in shades, rename them, but they were really like just kind of recycled colors from other palettes. I really love the Natural Eyes palette and a lot of the shades that came from there, and so I guess I don't really mind them being included in here. Basically, I like the fact that they're recognizing that some of their shadows are kind of well known. They do kind of have this identity. I think about the shades Push Up and Honey Pot. Those are colors that, yeah, if I hear that name, I know what that shade is, without even looking at it. So I kind of like that they recognize that with this palette, and they gave us things that may be very loved colors in your collection. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty here and talk about swatches and the exact colors that are in here. And the way I chose to break this up and swatch it for you is these 2 rows, then the center, and then the end. So here we're talking the lightest tones overall in the middle, I think mid-tones, and then your deepest colors at the end. So that just makes it a little bit easier to discuss and compare the shades. So starting off, what you see swatched out is going from Spotlight to Heaven, and then Honey Butter to Fairytale on the next row. Some of these shades, just given my skin tone that they're swatching on top of, they may not seem to be really bouncing off my skin a whole lot. But what I'm noticing with shades that I've seen before in other palettes, like Heaven and Honey Butter, that was from the Natural Matte, a nice texture to the mattes. They're creamy, they're soft, they're what I expected to see and work with on my eyes. So I really appreciate the fact that they seem to stay true to their matte texture, which I really like from Too Faced. Now Fairytale, that's the shade right up here. This color is the only one in the palette that is that kind of flaky, all over the place, glittery, just kind of crazy shade. I think it's been a complaint in the past with different holiday palettes that they've put too much of that kind of shade in a palette. But here you're just getting one shade of this type, and I did work it into a tutorial to show you how I like to use the color and sort of show off how that shade is best used, and it really needs to be put on top of of a base, that's where it really shines. And it can pop a whole lot if you do it that way. So while in a swatch, you're gonna look at that shade and give it a total eye roll, it really does work in a look if you know how to use it. This shade called Kittens right here, it looks almost like a soft lilac with a goldeny undertone to it, and that is a really pretty like thought behind a shade. I like the concept, but it is a little sheer. Poodle, this color down here is just brilliant. That is a really brightening highlight shade because it has just a little bit of a pinkiness to it. Not a lot, just a bit to make it like next level brightening. And it's also one that's more like a soft pearlescent look, you know, it's not downright metallic. So there are definitely some great things happening in those first couple of rows, but I really get more impressed as the palette goes along. So moving on to our next couple of rows, which are kind of mid-tones. Here I think is where you're getting a lot of variety. Down toward the bottom of the palette, the shades Honeymoon and Hot and Bothered, those are gorgeous, and those give you a very pronounced warm look. And just taking a glance at this palette, when I first got it, I didn't especially think of it as a super warm palette, but those two shades can totally take you there. And then working up from that, these shades here, Dear Diary and Coffee Date, I think are especially smooth. Bunny Nose is sort of a sheer pink, and I will tackle that shade in one of the tutorials. I love Moonbeam here. This color is like silver with a hint of gold thrown in. There's one of those unique colors. Push Up and Honey Pot, iconic shades from past palettes. I mean, Push Up is just a gorgeous color in my book. The best way to describe Push Up would be dirty rose gold. There's just a little bit of brown working in there. Nudie is going to be that crease color everybody wants. Tickle Me might be the weakest shade in the palette. It's got a little bit of sparkle. You know, it's kind of a soft shade. I'm just not really feeling that one too much. And then we're moving into our last two rows where I think it can be really hard to put dark neutral colors in a palette and really set them apart in some way. Give us something different that we haven't seen before. But Too Faced, I think, really managed to do it with this palette. I'm glad to be saying that because when I first got it, I thought, okay, another neutral palette. You know, we all have that kind of assumption, but there's really some cool stuff going on here with the last two rows. First off, the shades down here at the bottom, Makeup and Chill and Stiletto. Those are very strong matte dark brown and matte black colors. So it's great that those are in here. Those are going to give you the ability to anchor a lot of these shimmery shades in the palette. But I am in love with Love Bug. Like if I could create a shadow, that would probably be it. It's this mauvey, purpley, just kind of little splash of taupe. Sometimes when it hits the light, I see a little bit of bronze in that shade. It's so pretty. Smokin' is really surprising. I love that shade because it's kind of like charcoal, but I swear there's a splash of green in that shade. I can see it when it hits the light. Undercover is in here. I'm glad they're giving you a nice deep plum. That appears to have a little sparkle, but behaves very matte on the eyes, and you will notice that with some of these shades that you see a little sparkle with, but it doesn't like really sparkle big time on the eyes, and I don't mind that. So I have used this palette a lot. I really didn't want to just like do one look with it, swatch it out, and then give you my review. I wanted to put some of these shades into action and be able to tell you like from a first-hand I've used it perspective, you know, how this works. And I really am a fan of this palette, I gotta say. Something I'm really happy with is that I think they have all of the basic matte bases covered. In terms of a neutral eye palette, I mean, it doesn't leave me feeling like I need anything else because you've got your matte, like kind of cream color up here. You've got a couple of really easy tones to work with as soft matte crease colors with Nudie and also Honey Butter down here. And then you've got your two deep dark guys down here that I think are necessities. Dark matte brown, dark really rich saturated black. And then even on top of that, you've got a few other mattes to play with shades like Lace Teddy, this peach, Spotlight, kind of a yellowy beige down here. So to me, I feel like the matte needs are covered here, but if you're a full-on just matte shadow lover and you don't go for a lot of shimmer whatsoever, what's left in this palette really is a lot of shimmer. And if that's not your thing, you might be better off just like going for the natural matte palette, because Too Faced natural matte palette is really just fantastic as far as just matte shadows go. But if you want that mix, I really was pleasantly surprised with so many of the shimmers in this palette. Colors that are doing just little unexpected things for me, and I like the ability to get a plummy look out of this palette. Love Bug and Undercover, those are working into this look today, and I really enjoyed it. And then, you know, a warm brown look, that's in here for you. Bronze and gold and that type of thing, totally there with a shade like Honey Pot. Cooler, like smoky eye type looks are in here as well. So the variety, I think once you start using this, will be very evident to you. Now I want to jump into the two different looks that I did. I wanted to do a couple because it's a pretty big palette, and I thought it might be nice to share just like a little inspiration maybe with what you can do with it. And I'm really not like the most super creative eyeshadow user all the time. Like, I really do look at things and I think, how would I realistically on a day-to-day basis like to use this palette? So I wanted to show you one look that I thought was really glam, and it definitely took that Fairytale shade that can be a little flaky. It really took it to the max. And then I've got the look that I've been wearing throughout the video that I think, while it is deeper on the lid, it's kind of a bit softer, and it's that very feminine pinky plum thing. So let's jump into those two looks. So after applying primer all over the lids, I used Nudie with a crease brush just all throughout the crease, really blending it out, getting it kind of in a nice wide path there throughout my crease. And then I took a slightly deeper brown, Makeup and Chill, and I used that just in the outer corner. After that, I used the peach called Lace Teddy just up above those shades to sort of help blend things out a little bit. And then I used Heaven, the matte cream color, just up under the brows. So we've laid all of this matte groundwork here, and then I'm using a primer that has a little bit of pearlescent finish to it. It's the Maybelline Master Prime, and I applied that on my lid, and then I blended it out a little bit with a synthetic brush from Real Techniques. And I wanted to definitely have a base when I used Fairytale, this ultra shimmery, kind of flaky shade. I patted that all over the lid, and I really wanted to just give that color a pronounced pop on the lid and the lid only, so that's what I did there. And then for some real contrast, I brought in Stiletto, the matte black, with a flat shadow brush, just patted that on the outer part of my lid, trying not to cover up too much of the sparkly shade, and then up into the crease a little bit. And then I used a smaller crease brush from Makeup Revolution just to concentrate the shade even more, get it exactly where I want it there in the outer V area. And then to really finish up the upper part of the eye, I used Honeymoon with my little white wispy E36 brush from Sigma, and I thought that gave a nice little warmth on the outer edge of my eye look. Then before moving on to shadow on the lower lash line, I'm doing liner. I'm using my Jordana Color Envy liquid liner in Black Envy, a great waterproof liner. Went all the way across the upper lash line and winged it out just a little bit. And then in my lower inner rim, I used my L'Oreal Silkissime liner in charcoal. This is great for being kind of smudgeable and smooth. Not the best in terms of staying power, but it'd get you through a night out for sure. Smudged it a little bit on my actual lower lash line, and then used an angled liner brush with Stiletto, the matte black, to blend in with my wing a little bit. And then I love this color called Smokin'. It's got just the slightest hint of olive green in it, and I blended that all throughout my lower lash line. Gives a really nice smoky effect, but a little brightness because it is shimmery. And then after I curled my lashes, I used my Essence Lash Princess mascara on the upper lashes and CoverGirl Clump Crusher Water Resistant on the lower lashes. The false lashes that I put on, I don't totally remember the style and brand, but they're very similar to Red Cherry number 43s. And after I got that on my upper lash line, you got the finished look with a really nice pop on the lid and some nice contrast in the outer corner and crease. And then I've got kind of a deep peachy pink blush on. It's matte and it's from the Balm. It's called Balm Springs. And on my lips, I'm wearing my Wet n Wild Gel lip liner in the shade Bear to Comment, and then my Revlon Ultra HD lip color in HD Sand. So for this look, I applied primer all over my lids, and I patted Love Bug all over the lids, and then I also used my Sigma E25 brush to work that shade up into my crease as well. And then I overlapped a lot of that shade on the lid with Undercover, which is a really rich plummy shade. It kind of behaves like a matte. It just has the teeniest bit of sparkle in it as you look at it in the palette. I also used a pencil brush just to slightly bring that shade on the lower lash line, and then that's really all I did shadow-wise on on the lower lash line. And then I took my white wispy brush and I went into Bunny Nose just to give a really pretty, like, kind of pinkish border on the look. This is kind of a sheer shade, and I do like it that way because I don't really want this color too full on. And then I took Poodle as my highlighting shade, both under the brow, and I also used a more pinpointed brush to bring it right around my inner corner. And then I went across my upper lash line with black liquid liner, and I went in my lower inner rim with a nude liner just to brighten things up, mascara top and bottom, and some false lashes. And I feel like the end result is sort of a plummy look with a little bit of a pink twist, though it's kind of hard to put your finger on the pink. You know, it's lightly there, but it's not a full-on, like, solid pink eyeshadow look. So bottom line here with this palette, who is it not for? I don't think it's for the person who primarily uses matte shades and just is not interested in a lot of shimmer, because let's face it, there's a lot of shimmer happening in here. While I think all the right necessity matte shades are included, there's still a lot of, like, sparkle and glow going on. Also, it's not for the person who's wanting a lot of color, because it is, as the name implied, a natural palette. The tones are kind of rooted in a neutral place. You might have a more pinky shade here or there. You might have something kind of rusty orangey, a little bit of plum, but overall it's a neutral eyeshadow palette. But for me, it really checks a lot of boxes because I feel like the variety is there for a neutral palette, right? The variety is there, the quality is there. There are really just two shades that were a little bit questionable to me. Kittens, you know, it's not a bad color, but it's going to be more on the light and sheer side, and also Tickle Me. But everything else, I mean, there's a lot of great quality happening in here. Some unique shades that after all this time in the makeup game were able to be neutral but still surprise me. And it's the kind of thing where I could simply grab this palette and do some easy one shadow looks, like the Love Bug color that I layered on with this look. That could have been a one shadow look after just a couple of steps. And there are multiple shades that I look around and see, you know, that could be one shadow looks in this palette. But then there are so many ways you can dress up the look, right? Make it really smoky or make it a little more glowy with some of the other tones. And then, like I said before, just packaging wise, I like that it's pretty, you know, it's adorable, but they didn't really overdo it with size. I'm not sure with 30 shades it could have been much smaller than this, right? So I'm very happy with that layout. So that is my take on the new Natural Love palette from Too Faced. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section, especially if you've tried it. What did you think? Thank you guys so much for taking time to watch, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!